there's this lady named Angela. Angela, she wanted to be an actress, and that was her career goal that she had. And she had actually been in a few of these little commercials and a few women programs that they had airing for a short time, but she never really hit it big, but it was a little bit of money coming in. And then the company that she would go through, they went out of business, and so did a couple other things that happened in the industry, went out of business. So she had some hard times. But you know what? She started missing some payments on her house. She started missing some payments because the money wasn't coming in. And so eventually she ended up going into the process that we call foreclosure. And foreclosure was one of those things that they're going to take away her house, and she just knew that the end is coming. Before everything went bad, she did have a person come over and start work on her house to remodel it some. But that guy had taken all her money and ripped her off and didn't do any of the work. So she had already had it bad. Now it just went from bad to worse. So not only did she get ripped off, now the bank's going to foreclose on her house. And she's like thinking, oh man, the end's coming. Well, she had two boys, and she also had a fiance. And she said she don't know what to do. And once she started talking to the mortgage company, she found out through the mortgage company that there is something called a modification. And she can do this modification. And the counselor was walking through the process with her and showing her how to do this. And she found out, man, she qualifies for this modification. And she loved it. So after she began the process, there was one catch that she didn't realize until they had already given her the approval of the modification. You have to make 3 payments in a row without missing one payment. She's like, I don't know how to do this. She's like, this is outside of what I can do right now because I just don't understand this whole modification process in the first place, then be able to go out and make the payments and on time right now. Everything's so hard. So what she finally did was she said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to make apple cake pie. Apple cake pies, not possible. Apple cakes. That's what she called it. Apple cakes. And then she called it mortgage apple cakes. And so they're called mortgage apple cakes. And she's going to make these. And there's something that she came up with years before when her grandmother used to cook these for her and her sons when her sons were young. And also even when she was a child. She says she remembers coming home to grandma's house after church. And her mom would have pies and desserts and cakes at the house. And she said that just brings people together. So she says, I'm going to make the one that I personally made, and that's called that apple cake. And she says, but I'm going to call it mortgage apple cake so that people that hear about these cakes know that the money that they're spending on this cake is going to help me pay to keep my house out of foreclosure. So she's going to charge $40 for a cake. And she told her fiance, I don't know that anybody's going to do it, but if I get 100 people to do this, then I can make my 3 mortgage payments on time and everything's going to be okay. So she starts up and she starts thinking about how grandma did it. And she says, there was that flavor and that smell of those cakes that just made you want to eat them. And she said, I just hope that I can do the same thing that grandma did. So what she started doing was she said, I'm going to start with just like grandma did. I'm going to put the best ingredients, none of that cheap stuff. I'm going to use the best ingredients. And sure enough, she used all natural, everything she could, made these cakes. And then she wasn't doing well in her acting career. So over the past 6 months, she went to a local college and she started taking some of the nursing classes because she figures while the acting career may not be going so well, she can at least start a new career as a nurse until the acting picks up. So she's going to be a nursing assistant or a doctor's assistant, however that works. And she starts going to this local college, community college, and then she goes up to the college, and she's been going there for 6 months, so she asked the teacher if she could make an announcement in class, and he allowed her to do that. She got up and said, I'm selling these cakes, and this is why I'm selling them. This is going to help me save my house and make my mortgage payment. At that class, she got like 15 or 20 orders for those cakes. She went home and she told her fiance about it, and the fiance and her 2 boys started making out flyers, and they started making other little advertising campaign strategies, and they went around the community for the next few days and just started getting more orders. By the end of it, she had 42 orders for these cakes. So she's in the house that next day, and she's baking away, man. She's got everything that she needs, and she's baking cake after cake after cake. Now, something interesting that happened is one of the local newspapers had heard her story, and they wrote an article about her, called her up, interviewed her, and wrote her. And she says, I don't know that they ever put that article in there, into the paper. But it was something interesting was at one point she heard a knock on the door. And she said, that must be my fiance, Melvin. He must be coming home early today. She goes, I'll be right there. I'm coming to the door. She gets the cake mix and everything washed off her hands, and she begins to go to the door, and she opens the door, and she says, are you the lady that's baking the cakes? And she said, yes. She goes, I'm with the health department. And she goes, you can't bake cakes inside of your house. You have to be inside of a commercial location baking these goods. So you have to stop your business here and now. She goes, but this is the only way that I can save my mortgage. She goes, no, you have to do it within the health code, and the health code does not allow you to do this inside of your personal residence. The lady went away, and she shut the door. And immediately, Angela fell to the floor, and she just began to cry and weep and thinking, that was the one thing that I was assured of, that I would be able to pull this off and get my mortgage paid and take care of all the things that I have going, is because of these cakes. And now I can't cook these cakes because I'm inside of my house. Her fiance did come home eventually later, and the 2 boys were there. She broke the news, and she said, we're just going to lose the house. Because the health department came by today, and they said, you can't bake cakes inside of your house. You know, I use this story, and as I read this story, it brought back memories of whenever we started our ministry. I remember how many hurdles we had to cross. Whenever we started, we were telling people that we're going to sell our apartment building, and we're going to rent out a convention center or some kind of big auditorium so we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we're just going to use all the money from our apartment building and do this one-day event. And event after event after event, meaning trial after trial after trial, we ended up going broke. We ended up in foreclosure. We ended up like as if God wasn't on our side. And that's exactly what Angela's feeling like right now. She says, it just feel like God just slammed the door. And man, I'll tell you what, I've been there. I know how that feels. It's like God just said, hey, I have nothing to do with you. It's that feeling of that separation from you and God because it's not going the way that you planned it. See, I had a plan. I was going to sell my apartment building, me and my wife, and we're going to take all that money and we're going to pay for an event and it's going to be over. But God's plan wasn't like that. God's plan was that apartment building's not going to sell so easily. In fact, it took a long time to sell, and it went into foreclosure and almost to the end where we were going to actually lose it in foreclosure. And then people turned against us saying we're wasting all our money. There's no point in this. So we have people telling us that. So I understand what Angela was going through when she's trying to do everything that she can. And she has a man that she trusted with money to rebuild her house, and he took off with all her money. Trusted that the bank knew what they were talking about when they said, hey, you can get a modification. Trusted that the fact that they knew that she wasn't bringing in that kind of money. And then she trusted the fact that, hey, this is a great idea. God has given me a wonderful idea. I'll bake cakes and I'll sell them. And then it seemed like a blessing from God. And this is the point that it just gets me, because this happened to us a lot. There's that point where you just feel like God is blessing me. He gave her 42 orders right away. That's a confirmation to most people. We say, God is with us. 42 orders. We're almost halfway there in such a short amount of time. I remember the confirmations that I would get. One time I prayed, and this was amazing to me, where God provided the money for us to make a mortgage payment. We thought we were going to miss a mortgage payment, and God provided. But then the next month, it didn't provide. He didn't provide the money the next month. And then I'm like, wait, why would you provide last month and not provide this month? And then the next month he didn't provide. I'm like, well, God, where are you at? So you start questioning who God is and why isn't he with you? Why isn't he helping you? Angela was going through the kind of questions that most people do as Christians, who have always said in their mind, I believe in God, I trust God. But boy, once something goes wrong, once something doesn't go the way that we plan, once we say, oh God, I have faith in you as long as everything goes well. But what if it doesn't go well? See, true faith in God is to trust him even if it's not going the way that you plan or you see successfully. If you see it, oh, this is the way it will work, there's no problem. But God says, no, but you're going to go this way. Do you still trust God? I mentioned to a few of you that, actually I mentioned to all of you, that you need to get out of your comfort zone to help this ministry. You need to give up some of that comfort in your life and say, you know what, this is my life plan, this is what I do, but God, if you're calling me to help more, then you know what, let me get out a little bit further. So I have to trust you a little more. People want God to bless them, but they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. My comfort zone for me was putting that house up for sale. I'm okay with that. But what if it doesn't sell? Are you still going to be in the ministry? Are you still going to trust God? Are you still going to love him like you said you did yesterday when everything was going wonderful? Angela had to answer that question too, and she kept thinking, why is God taking even my cake business away? Why is he letting everything fail? As a Christian and a believer, the Bible talks about us as babes in Christ. And that means that when you first become a Christian, you don't understand how much power God has. You don't understand how far he can take his abilities that's even beyond your abilities. Your abilities have a limit of how far you can go. God has so much power and so many, it's limitless. He can continue and continue to amaze us. His power has no limits. Whenever we get outside of our comfort zone, we're walking into where he's comfortable. And if we can just step away from what fears us and step into what we call faith and say, God, I am going to have complete faith in you no matter what happens. I have 100% faith in you. That's a walk of faith that the Bible has been talking about for years, even from the very beginning. And if you read the Bible from the beginning to the end, you will see it says, fear not, fear not, fear not. Why? Because he wants you to have faith. When we have that kind of faith in God, that's 100% faith in a God that you cannot see. But if you give him your life, you will be able to see him clearly spiritually, because he will begin to guide you and direct you. He will begin to show you that he's there with you and that he never leaves you, he never forsakes you. That's why when your house goes in foreclosure or your car breaks down, or your cake business, as in Angela's case, your cake business can't go any further. There's a roadblock ahead. You know, this week we were donated a sign this week. It's a nice sign. We get to change the letters on it, and we can put it out in the front. And we seriously couldn't afford the sign if we went out and paid for it. I went ahead and accepted the donation, and we placed it in the back, and we have it wrapped up for right now. And I drove straight down to the city to get a permit to put up the sign and see how much it would cost. And guess what? We can't have a sign in the city of Stanton that you can change the letters. And this is a letter changing sign. Really? A marquee is what they call it. We have a sign that was donated and can't use it. I look at that and I'm like, okay, God, why would you give us a donation and allow somebody to donate something like this that is perfect for our church and not be able to use it? But because of the faith that I have in God, because of the faith that I know that and the power about that I know about my God, because of all the things He's taken me through before, I don't doubt that He's going to work this out Himself. You know what? Once I talked to the city and I found out that, hey, you can't have a sign like that, you know what? I said, thank you. We'll find a different way. I did ask the lady, I said, hey, what if, is there a way to challenge it? And she goes, you can challenge it, but the city council is just going to give it back to my boss, and my boss is going to give it back to me, and I'm going to come back to you. And I go, basically, you just saved me going full circle. She's like, yeah, pretty much. Super nice. I love our city. I love our city. Our city has good leadership, and I'm good with them. That's why it's just one of the rules. They have rules that they have to go by. But my God's not limited by rules. My God will find a way. If He gave us a sign that we can use at this church, it's either going to be used here or it's going to be passed on to someone who can use it. God did not deliver that sign to us to just have it look like trash in the back of our church. So now what do? You just pray. And you say, God, you delivered this to us. Let us use it the way you want us to use it. You know, when you walk by faith, that's what you're saying. You're saying, God, no matter what you send my way, I'm going to place it right back into your hands, and you're going to use it for whatever you intended to use it for. Same thing with my life. Whatever you want me in my life to be used for, use me. I'm ready. It's a faith relationship that God has to send you through some hard times before you figure it out. If you stay in your comfort zone, you will never figure it out because you're comfortable. But if God is allowed to take you out of your comfort zone, you're going to experience His power and His glory, His abilities, which is going to exceed yours by a long shot. He is so much more powerful than us. He can make things happen that we can never make happen. So stand on the line. Stand on the line and then walk across into faith. And walk across boldly, knowing that God is with you. And where you believe that you will fail, He will not fail. In Hebrews 10:35, it says, therefore, do not throw away I'm going to read that again. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. I've told you this, and I'll preach it over and over. First of all, make sure it's God giving you the promises. If God promises you something, He cannot lie. You must know that. Whatever you have said in your life as far as God has told me to do this or He's told me to do that, you know what? A lot of people say God's told me, so when I find out it was just their own imagination. If God has spoken to you, you will hear His voice and not yours. It will be confirmed. It will be confirmed over and over by other people. And also, most importantly, it will be confirmed by His word. It will not contradict His word. And it will be confirmed. Then you will be sure this is what God called me to do. Now, I'm not saying you won't doubt it later. But I'm saying as far as your foundation and God calling you, if you seek to make sure it's God, He will confirm to you that it's Him. And He will confirm to you this is His will for you. Now, saying that, I want you to know that as Angela was being attacked, basically, The health department wouldn't let her bake her cakes. Her house is in foreclosure. People have ripped her off. It's hard to say, God, did you really bless me with all this? Is this really you that's with me? You will question it, but you know what? You'll always go back to the time that God confirmed those promises to you. There's a promise in the Bible that I've repeated almost in every sermon for the past month. He will never leave you or forsake you. You must know that's true. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ and you've given him your life, he says he will never leave you or forsake you. You need to hold strong to that. Here it says, do not throw away your confidence. That's in verse 35 of Hebrews 10. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence. It means the confidence, the faith that you've had, do not cast it away. Do not throw it away. That means do not pick up what you've established with God and say, hey, forget this stuff. It doesn't work. He says, don't throw it away. You are in a relationship building process. That people don't like to use that term, but it is a process of building your relationship with a God that you cannot see, but you put total trust in. As you go closer and closer to God, he draws you closer. And this confidence that you've had, don't just throw it away. You continue to get closer to him. You hold on to that confidence. Start going back, and the Bible uses this a lot. It says, go back and remember the things that he's done for you before. Every time he talked to the Israelites, he goes, remember when I had you cross the waters on dry land? Remember that? Remember when you were thirsty and I had water come out of a rock? Remember that? Remember when you wanted food and I just brought food down from heaven? Remember that? Why would I fail you now? So the same thing in your life. And in fact, I wrote a book on it because it got to be so many things that God did for me and ended up a book. It wasn't intended to be a book. It was intended for me to remember all the wonderful things that God's done for me. And eventually I had my little small book of about 100 pages of all the things that God had taken me through and built my faith in him. He established who I am. He said, Paul, you were a little faithful. You had a little bit of faith. But I want to show you what real faith is. Real faith is trusting me when it's not going your way. True faith is trusting me when you're sad and you're down and you're depressed and you're lonely and you're broken. You're poor. You're hopeless. You're helpless. And you still trust me. That's faith. Angela fell to the floor and she's crying and tears are coming out of her eyes. And when her fiance came home and she announced that, hey, there's nothing else we can do. They're going to take the house. We can't bake the cakes. There's nothing that we can do. And he goes, no, no, you're wrong. He goes, we can pray. They brought the family together with the two boys and Melvin and Angela, and they came together and they prayed, and Angela prayed a prayer similar to this. And I don't know, I forgot her exact words, but I know the most important part. It said, God, I came to a place that I ran out of options. But through prayer, it's my greatest option. And I've never ran out of that. She came to that point that God was bringing her to that said, no, you've ran out of options. You, in your power, in your abilities, you're done. Now trust me. Now have faith in me. What a world of difference when you can finally say, I'm done here, but he's just beginning. That's when you're walking by faith and your trust, and you're like, how did this happen? How did it happen? It answers the million of years question, if you want to say a million years. The lifetime question of all. Is there a God? Is there a God? Let me tell you something. When you have to trust in this God and you find out that he's there with you and he's answering your prayer, you never have to answer that again. You never even have to have that question into your head again because you know the answer. There has to be a God because he heard my prayer and he's here with me and he's answering it. Whenever I was walking with my wife and family through this walk of faith, and Chazzy and Brianna, and we got to see how much God helped us. You know what? I don't care how long I've been a Christian. I was 100% sold when I went to the edge of my abilities and I crossed over and allowed God to begin to use his abilities. And when I saw his power and when I saw his work, it was confirmation that the God that I serve is the one and only true God. Angela and Melvin and her 2 sons prayed. All of a sudden, the next day, she gets this memory of that newspaper reporter that did an article on her. And she called up and said, hey, I want to tell you the rest of the story. And I want to know if you can put it in the paper right away. And she went ahead and said that she's been shut down by the health department. Her house is in foreclosure. And she's just running this in the local paper. And he says, you know what? Your article is going to run tomorrow. And it's already in there. And it's in the obituaries. And she's like, you know what? You may have just called me dead because now it's over. She goes, you may have just go ahead and say it. It's done. But she was wrong. She says, I've never seen so many people respond to the obituaries. She goes, the Hilton called me up and said, we read your article and we're going to let you use our kitchen. She goes, they said, come on down and begin to cook your cakes in our commercial kitchen at the Hilton. She went there and she began, but other people also replied. And they responded and said, we want to buy one of your cakes. We want to buy one of your cakes. And now 5 years later, she has a full-on business making cakes. And she's always wanted to be an actress. And it's funny because this production company called her up and made a movie about her life story, about her cake business, about her troubles. God just wanted her to let go and let him do it. Wanted her to trust in prayer. Trust in the fact that you can call on Jesus and he'll be there for you. Because we try to fight those battles. We try to take care of everything because we're the superheroes. All of our life, we've been the super ones. But God doesn't want us to be the superhero. He wants us to trust in him. Because he really has the superpowers. Those powers that are beyond comprehension.